going to write his own lyrics. And here's an example of one of his lyrics that he wrote to the tune that started with I Have a Love. And that is, once in your life, only once in your life, comes a flash of light, and there stands your love. Not very specific, really generic. And so again, we know that Steve wrote the lyric, I have a love, and it's all that I have. And again, it's more first person, more personal, and a better way to fit that particular moment. Steve also had interesting challenges because some of the melodies from Candide, Lenny wanted to use, and one of it was One Hand, One Heart. And if you know music, One Hand, One Heart is a 3/4 tune, and it starts, make of our hands one hand. Well, Lenny did not have the first 2 quarter notes in the phrase, so it was da, 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 da. And Steve had nothing to focus a word on. So Sondheim, being a musician himself, really challenged Lenny to rethink some of the things that he was writing. And G. Officer Krupke was verbatim a tune that was written for Candide, and in some ways it really sounds like a lot of the rest of the Candide score, if you know that. And let's talk a little bit about Somewhere. Now, Somewhere was a melody that Lenny had in his trunk for years. He tried to get it into On the Town. He tried to get it into Wonderful Town. He tried to figure out how to use it in one of his symphonies. So by God, here's a show, and this tune is going in the show. Well, Steve's problem with that is, if you know the song, there's a place for us. Okay, the music is starting to soar, and there should be an important word for the second note in the song. There's A is not really an important word. It doesn't tell you much. And Steve was never satisfied with that. But again, the song is part of the score, and one of the highlights for me, the melody just soars, and the fact that it is part of the Dream Ballet in the second act, to me, that's one of the highlights of West Side Story. So let's talk a little bit about G. Officer Krupke. Okay, it comes in the second act. Right after Maria learns that Tony killed her brother Bernardo, everything is tense. Well, if you look at Shakespeare's Romeo and Juliet, between the time that Romeo kills Juliet's cousin and some other things are going on, Shakespeare threw in a couple of clowns and a band to lighten the mood before Act 4 started. And so Arthur just thought that we need to keep that structure, that everything is going to get more intense as the second act proceeds, and we need something to let the audience breathe. So G. Officer Krupke came to mind. And there were many different versions of lyrics for that Steve wrote. And here's one example, sung by Action, who is kind of the catalyst for that whole song, or the center of this whole song. And I found this was really interesting. I'm sensitive by nature. I'm delicate and shy. When people say I hate you, I always start to cry. I'm ever so artistic, an orchid in a slum. Goodness gracious, that's why I'm a bum. And there are several other more examples of what finally evolved into Gee Officer Krupke, which again has another interesting twist to it, because when they made the movie in 1961, they put Officer Krupke where the song Cool is, in the drugstore scene. And in some ways it works, and in some ways, I don't know about that. I think that these are professional writers, and the fact that they never insisted that the licensed version of West Side Story change that is good. And here's a little bit about the quintet. It's really a quartet because we have the Jets, the Sharks, Anita, Maria, and Tony, but Maria and Tony are singing the same melody. So it's really not 5 different vocal parts, it's 4 different vocal parts, so it's a quartet, not a quintet. And the Tonight melody first landed in the quintet. And One Hand, One Heart was going to be the song on the balcony scene where Maria and Tony first have their conversation after they've met at the dance. And they didn't think One Hand, One Heart had very much passion. And if these two are getting hot for each other, make of our, it really doesn't register. The only lyric that Sondheim said, or gave to Lenny, and Lenny said, was "A boy like that who'd kill your brother." And if you think of the lyric, it's what Sondheim was evolving, or starting to evolve in what culminates in Steve's later work. Now let's talk about 2 songs that were never written. As you know, after Maria sings I Have a Love, there is no more vocal music in West Side Story. And originally, there was going to be an aria for Tony as he is looking and shouting to Chino to come and kill him. And then there's Maria, who has the basically soliloquy, well, how many bullets are left for me? And that was a speech that Arthur wrote, and he thought that Lenny would definitely musicalize it. But he couldn't find the right music, and I think I know why. Because to have Maria sing at the end of this, and I know it violates any rule that Oscar Hammerstein wrote of how music functions when you can't speak, the only thing that you could do is sing. But how can somebody sing? Well, they do it in opera. But Maria's just lost her the love of her life, and she's gonna threaten suicide. And why sing about that? It's gonna keep the audience in their seats for another 10 minutes before you understand what the end of the play is. So again, I have to hand it to these professional writers that really know how to make the most of a story. Now a little bit about